Do we need to be mastering engineers in this day and age of being mixing engineers? This question comes on several levels. One, do we need an understanding of mastering to help our mixing? Do we need to be mastering engineers because a lot of clients, I'm finding at least, and other people I speak to, don't necessarily understand the difference between mixing and mastering. For a lot of people, they seem to be one in the same thing. And do we need to be mastering engineers purely from a business point of view where we can offer another service? Welcome back to the Working Audio Tools podcast, where we constructively critique mixers and analyze all the details that make mixing so freaking difficult to get good at. But this podcast is documenting our journey, and Paul and I are constantly making revelations each week, constantly evolving our process, and we document it here. My name's Ed Thorne, and my co-host is Paul Third. Thoughts on mastering? I think the main thing for me is I've embarked on learning mastering properly. I'm studying it. I've got numerous courses to do. The idea being that I develop my ears and it helps with my mixing. What are your thoughts on that?
I still believe that in a ideal world, you would have a separate pair of ears. We've spoke about it before. I believe that a separate pair of ears is always good to have. However, there's an ideal world and then there's a business world. And so many modern engineers, and I say modern engineers is because if we think about the Bob Clear Mountains and the Dave Pensados and, you know, the Jack Joseph Puigs and the Manny Markins and the Serbins and even the Spike Stench, you know, for many years, they were always sending their mixes to mastering engineers. That was the way it was done. Even if you think about Larrabee, you had Dave Pensado, Manny Markin, and I can't remember who the other mixer was, but I think you had Jason Joshua in there as well in the mix. And they had a mastering engineer in Larrabee. So there was that kind of dialogue and that kind of chain. There was a process behind it. But in modern day times, it's difficult because it's very separated. Now, again, we all don't have the luxury of getting internships, you know, to be working in massive studios. It's getting tons of like industry grade fucking, you know, productions and big hits. So you've got to think, as I said last week, and Tura Medina said it very well, when he was talking about seeing yourself almost like a fine dining restaurant. And really, when everybody wants, in the modern day age, everybody wants to come and get everything as a one-stop shop. They want you to be their starter. In an ideal world, they're starters, so they would work with you as a producer, then you would do the mixing, and then you would master it. Starter, main, dessert, job done. They walk away, one payment, and that's it done. And many modern engineers, again, Tura Medina, my good friend Emre Çelik, and many other engineers, even if you think about Panorama, Nicholas from Panorama Mastering, you know, he does mixing as well and mastering. There's tons and tons of modern engineers who are now doing the whole thing because from a business aspect it works. However, I believe that to get to that level, you've got to first master one of the two. I think doing it together is very convoluted. I think, you know, if you're going to be a mastering engineer, first learn mastering and be the best mastering engineer that you can, and then try and, you know, become the best mixing engineer that you can, and vice versa. Like the way that me and Ed are just now, we're trying to be the best mixing engineers that we can, and then when we feel we're at a good consistent place, then we try and see, right, well, what would the mastering engineer be adding? So it's a very difficult thing to answer because you've got to deliver and be a master at both. You can't just be a jack of all trades but a master of none. You've got to be a master of these. So if you're, in my personal opinion, if you're going to be doing mixing and mastering, your mastering skills should be as good as your mixing skills, and your mixing skills should be as good as your mastering skills, and the two of them should coincide. Many people just see mastering as a kind of, oh yeah, just slap a limiter on it and just, you know, put a high pass filter in it and job done. That's it. Just fucking get it loud and then send it to the client, and if they accept it, then happy days. And many people get away with that nowadays because at the end of the day, does a client really understand, you know, a master that's just had a limiter slapped on it? Do they? Because they'll never have a direct A/B or anything to compare it to. Yeah. So many people, again, I'm not saying names, I know certain people that just chance their mitt in this modern era and just The mastering to them is just genuinely slapping a limiter on it, get it to -8.5, 7, 6 LUFS, whatever, send it out, and like fingers crossed the client accepts it. So it's a very difficult world to be in right now. I'm just trying to get the best that I can be as a mixing engineer. Then when I feel that so confident in my own mixing abilities, then I'll start to look into mastering. It could be argued that yes, it's important to understand the mastering, and I suppose I do understand the mastering because that's why I mix into a limiter. That's why I purposely, master my low end, as Jason Joshua was talking about at the Mix with the Masters session on Abbey Road. Like I do several forms of clipping. I understand how to get my mix to say -11, -10. It's just I don't know how to get myself to, the -8s, the -6s, the -5s, and, keeping that mix solidified as possible and not sounding overly pumped and just ruining the entire mix. What's your opinion, Zed? Because everybody's going to be different, and I know you've been looking into mastering and you've been doing a lot of practices and you've taken a lot of courses and stuff. What's your opinion now you've had a little bit of time experimenting with mastering?
It's a very different mindset, and it's quite a bit more of a different mindset than I anticipated, but it doesn't have to be as complicated as some people may imagine. Some people, I think, see it as a bit of a dark art. I think to do it very well, like anything, it is a dark art. But I'm finding so far that less is more. Again, surprise, surprise, we've come across this before. But it's definitely taken me out of a mixing mindset, but it's making me really hone in on low end. And really, what's been interesting is with the subwoofers I've got in the room now that I've moved around a bit, and I've got them in a much better position than they were in, where previously I was turning them up and I was putting more bass into mixers. I don't understand how that works. Now I've got them at a good level and I'm putting the right amount of bass in. I'm really hearing the difference, between high passing between, say, 10 hertz and 24 hertz, 24 hertz and 18 hertz and 12 hertz for some reason, probably multiples of the Magic 3, seem to be quite magic high pass frequency points. I'm experimenting around with that and really listening to how that clears up the track, but also how that can influence the mid-range and the upper mid-range, because once you start phase shifting stuff, you can start creating problems for yourself quickly. So just from a practice point of view of honing my ears in to that stuff, it's really useful. And also when you're making EQ moves, you're thinking, right, so what do I need to pull out of the track? Okay, well, the vocals could come out. Fab filter EQ with the solo feature, just sweep around some bands and think, okay, well, the vocals are prominent here and here, but the snare drum's prominent here, so maybe I need to pull this bit of vocal out. Is it, a third of a dB, half a dB it needs? Is it a full dB? It's really, really helping me hone in and tune in on little details that otherwise I think when you're mixing, you've got so many things to deal with, so many processes and concepts, so many things you've got to think about. It's easy to overlook stuff. Whereas when you've just got a stereo mix, I'm not doing stem mastering yet or anything. Probably won't bother. Can't be bothered. But in terms of stereo, you've got a stereo file, stereo mastering. You can focus on just one detail at a time. So when I've gone back to mixing, I feel like I've been able to identify problems quicker and it's really helped my ears in terms of getting a natural balance quickly without using Insight or any kind of level measuring tool. So it's been really useful so far, but as I've said before, for me, it's about improving the mixing. And then if I can, if clients say, well, can you master it as well? I'll be like, yeah, cool. Like, not yet, but at some point I'll probably be like, yeah, cool. Put 50 quid on the bill and I'll do that. And it saves going to other people and faffing about and things taking more time. Now, what I would definitely do is do that in a different session. I have a mastering template in Pro Tools that works nicely, and I would do it on a different day with fresh ears. That's one rule I would set for myself for it. So at the moment, it's an ear development practice with a view to just adding more skills to the bow, and I don't see why at some point I can't be offering pure mastering. It's fun. It's interesting. It's fun because it's less work. Like you can. I mean, I've been spending a couple of hours on masters, and I've still. I did one the other day, and I got up to version 7. I was like, oh, this reminds me of the early days of mixing. When it would be 5 or 6 would be the magic effing number, which I've got lower now. So it's just a case of experience and working quicker. But it's quite good fun, actually, just spending a couple of hours tweaking something. It's not your music. You're not attached to it emotionally. I think the dangers of mastering music you've written and produced and then mixed, which is what you and I both do, Paul. Personally, I wouldn't want to master my own stuff. At all. I don't think I ever would. I would send it to someone, with the skills, more evolved ears, and exactly as you said at the start, a third-party set of ears to give that important and imperative perspective. Because I think if you're listening, and this is the danger with mixing and mastering yourself, if you're so used to hearing something that you've been listening to for a day or 2 days, even if you come in with fresh ears, you're still going to be used to it. Now, you can do the whole reset test and, put on pink noise or put on reference tracks or whatever you want. And obviously using AB adapter metric plugin, which is great, or reference from mastering the mix.
That's what I use.
Yeah, that's a good one. Those 2 tools are great, so you can see where you've come from, where you've been, especially the level match feature. That's so important.
Yeah, back to
I'll tell you what, the main thing that stood out is it's very easy to create a different sounding master.
Yeah.
But the fine art is creating something that is uniformly better. I was trying to reverse engineer some streaky masters last week, and I think in some ways I got a bit more dynamic range, a bit more clarity in the top end. He went for a bit more of a low, mid, forward version of this mix. I think I got a slightly punchier kick, but then I ended up having a bit of a smiley face EQ again, and I thought, this is familiar. I used to do this with mixing. It was interesting spotting that, being streakies and then thinking, right, well, how can I do this? And I was doing that in tandem with his course. There's 4 tracks on his mastering deep dive course that he does. There's like a hip-hop one, a house one, a pop one, and some crazy thing. And what I did on those 4 was do my own master, listen to his, to do my own naturally, right? What do I think makes this work? I'm aiming for A LUFS because I know that's what he does. And then listening to his and thinking, okay, well, what's different? What's he done better? Have I done anything better? Because I think there were a couple of times I preferred what I'd done. But overall, he'd done a better uniform job in a couple of cases. So then I'm trying to tweak what I've done to match his, getting as close as I can, and then going into the course and watching what he's done and thinking, okay, well, I've done that, he's done that, it's the same effect, but maybe that's a better way of doing it. And then revising what I've done again. So it's trying to utilize the tools available, really, to just hone in and get as good a result as possible. But again, like mixing, mastering is so subjective. Yeah. It's so subjective to taste, genre specifications. It's another minefield. And it's something that, again, like with everything, experience will be key. Practice will be key. I've sent the masters to a few different people for feedback. And again, as we've done with mixing, it might just be a case of finding a mentor and someone with impeccable ears saying, no, crap, do it again. No, crap, do it again. It's a learning curve. I'm enjoying it. And the one mix I've done since I've been deep diving into this, I pulled together really quickly. So I was happy with that.
From last week's episode, I found some of the comments quite interesting. Many people are like, the mix bus is sacred and just leave it alone and do minimal stuff. And I think when I was looking at my mix bus today, can I start to take a few things off my mix bus and make it sound as good? So I went back to my mix bus today and it was like Gullfoss. So I was like, right, why am I using Gullfoss? So I was like, right, I quite like the way it controls the low end, but there always was something in the low end that I didn't like. It's like a smeariness kind of in the low end. So it can sometimes tuck your low end in. So I went back to it and I was like, right, trying to like do it, have it not affecting the lows, not really affecting the highs, because it always does this thing where it fucking always wants to make stuff super bright. And I was having it just affecting the mid-range, and then level matched it, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. And then when I was thinking about it, I was like, it's not that different. It's like, I'm like, it's a subjective difference here. And I'm only using it mainly because our in-house mastering engineer, Marcel, I don't know if he does it now, but you know, when the last time I spoke to him, he was using the master version of Gullfoss. So I was like, and he used to say to me, if you're using that, then I won't use it. So I used to use it because I was thinking, right, if my mastering engineer is going to be putting that on it anyway, then I may as well using it. But then when I was thinking today that if I start working for clients and they've got their own mastering engineer, they might not use Gullfoss Master. And I wasn't even using Gullfoss Master because the CPU will fucking kill my session. So I've been using the normal version of Gullfoss. And I played with it, 5, 10, 15. And I could hear what I was doing. And I was A-Bing and I was like, yeah, I could hear why people like it. Because it does soften everything. But it can make things sound a little bit too... sometimes a little bit too neutral sounding. It's doing a lot of processing. And I think in and out, I was like, I could hear it Sims processed. I was like, I could see why I was liking it. But then when I was bringing it in and out, I was like, right, what is it about the mix that I'm feeling isn't right? And I went back to the mix and I just made a few tiny little tweaks. Amazingly, I took more sustain out of the bass. If you watch my video from last week, you'll be amazed that I took even more sustain out. And I was like, wow, even more mid-range came in and I just brought that bass level up, and taking the sustain out of the bass allowed me to push that bass up. And I took even more sustain out of the kick and it allowed it to be even more tighter. And I was sitting there thinking, right, this is what guys like Emra have been teaching me over the years, where don't try and let your mix boss do it. Always do it on the tracks. Always go back to your mix and fix your mix. And then, after like 20 minutes, I was like, right, I don't need Gullfoss anymore. Right, okay, I stopped using it for that reason, went back to it because of Marcel. And now I'm like, okay, I don't need it. Right, it's just extra processing, it's killing my sessions, take it out, don't need it. And then I went back.
I use Ozone, it's a great reference tool.
Yeah. And then when I went to Clarity, and I was like, right, listen to what Clarity is doing. So I was listening to what Gullfoss and Clarity was doing. I was like, right, it's too overprocessed. I'm letting it do too much heavy lifting. Even though it's only like a dB at the most, it's a lot of processing going on. You're phase shifting, you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, okay, right, what's Clarity doing? Do I need it? And then I actually took it, but I backed it off. So I was like, I had it at 13, backed it off to 10. And I was like, right, okay, I still like what it's doing. I still hear there's a difference that I like, where with Gullfoss it was take it or leave it. And I was having to take away all the high-end detection and the low-end detection up to about 200 hertz. So I don't need it. So I took that off. Clarity, I still felt like it was doing something. So when I look back at my mix bus today from last week, I've got no bus compression.
Is last week's video irrelevant already?
I know, and now it is, yeah. I've got no fucking bus compression, and I
I've been taking mine off. I've been taking my bus compression off and just relying on the clipping and the limiting. Clipping is your best friend once you know how to use it.
Told you, mate. Told you.
Yep.
Because when you clip, now for anybody that doesn't know, right, very quickly, right, if you use a clipper in the right way, and I use hard clipping, that's what Emra said to me. I was using soft clipping, and Emra was like, bro, hard clipping all the way. Because what happens is...
Explain the difference for those who might not be aware.
Right, so say like when you've got a hard clipper, right, think of it like this, right? Just think of it like that, right? A bit of really flat ceiling. With a hard clipper, anything that goes above that ceiling gets wiped out, right? Now, with a soft clipper, what happens is it adds in a little bit of a soft knee. So imagine you've got this hard clipper and you add in a bit of a soft knee. So what happens is, before transients get to the ceiling, what happens is there's a bit of a soft knee, so it starts to compress. So you'll have certain bits getting slightly compressed, and then anything that's too loud hits the clipper. So it's a gradual slope, where with the hard clipper, it is generally just peak, bang, gone. Now, you'll add in more distortion by doing hard clipping, but if you set your clipper right and you get it for fast peaks, you're never going to fucking hear it. So, like, on a kick and a snare, I use TDR limiter 6. And what I do is I've got a peak limiter and I've got a clipper after it. So the peak limiter is very, very clean. And it uses a little bit more CPU, but I've got it set to ×3, which I'm pretty sure is its look ahead. Because I want to make sure that it's not missing out any peaks. And what the peak limiter's doing is it's cleaner, so it's doing half a dB, and then the clipper's after it. And I set it in a way where the threshold of the clipper is a dB below that. So basically, it's almost like a safety net. So I've got the peak limiter doing this, and then the clipper's just catching anything stray that may affect the limiter. Because if you let that in, what's going to happen is it's going to hit your limiter, and what's going to happen is you're going to be limiting your entire mix. If you do it on the track, it's less audible because you've got all the rest of the instruments. If you do it on the mix bus and you affect your limiter, or again clipping, again, what do you do when you clip? You add in distortion, so you're distorting your mix bus. So you're giving yourself more headroom. And on bass, I just clip. I clip like 1 to 2 dB. I just find that works better for me. I was compressing, peak limiting, and then doing a bit of clipping, just half a dB. But I find that when it comes to low end, the energy is so vast. I just clip it. I just clip that thing. And I'm just like hitting it, so I've got more control of the bass. So long story short, right, but I don't do, I say that all the time, but Paul's short stories are still long, right? Either way, what I learned that the more that you do on the tracks, the better that your mix will be, because you're not you're not needing the mix bus processing. You know, what I've kind of realised was that I didn't need a mix bus compressor. I was like, oh, I need glue, because I had a few mixes that were sounding pokey, and maybe just like not could have been a little bit glued. So what did I do? I went back to the mix and I was like, right, okay, let's take that off. Let's add the bus compression, the 2-bus compression, to the instrument bus. Let's glue that. With the pokiness of the snare I had, again, I used Dyne 1, I used the multiband bit, and I was compressing the mid-range of the snare a little bit so it wasn't fighting with the vocal. And then all of a sudden, I was finding that I was doing glue individually. I was gluing them all individually instead of letting a processor doing it over the entire mix. Because what I found with mix bus compression that is really frustrating with it is that I always feel like you're fighting with it. You always feel like you need to go back and tweak it, and you're always listening. You're like, it's always like a compromise. But I'm like, if you just do everything on the tracks, then you're mastering your mix in the right way. And, you know, the more processes I took off. So I'm now at a point where my mix bus now is the Sonomus Brits and routing. The EQ, I changed my EQ from titanium to ruby, which is the DW Fern, which is, you'll see it in every studio in LA.
Yeah.
The reason I did that was because I've always liked the phase, just the pass through of it. And Emra used to really, really love it. And I know that, again, Baines uses it and a few other engineers use it. So I was like, right, titanium, let's swap it out. So I swapped it out and I did level match dBs. And I found that the phase response of Ruby was way better in the low end. I was actually losing low end with titanium. It was like it was adding colour to the mid-range that I thought I liked. And then when I tried Ruby, I was like, oh. Because it's almost like they've got like a DC offset or something. There's like a very, very, very low-pass filter in it. So obviously, again, it's amazing when you A/B the two processes, just to pass through them, you're like, oh my God, the bass is so much different.
And these are Acoustica plugins, right, for anyone who doesn't know what Ruby is.
Yeah, and you know, Ruby, the low end was just sitting more. I was getting more low end out of it, and I was like, right, okay, this actually, then it was just phase. And then I did the 8K thing, and again, I tried to level matches, curve match them as good as I could. Played about with the cues just to double check. And then it's got this nice thing, and it's a 24K cut. And people will be like, 24K? But obviously, if you think about the whole thing will encroach into the audible range. And I heard a few people doing that, and I went, right, I was looking at ozone tonal balance, and I was like thinking like almost like a mastering engineer, like what would a mastering engineer need to do to this? So I was using isotope tonal balance as a reference, and I could see that I had a little bit too much high end, but a bit too much high end and maybe a bit too much high mids. And I was like, right, okay, let's try this low cut. So this high cut. So I tried this high cut, and I did it like 2 dB. Then all of a sudden, see when I took away a lot of this high kind of fizzle, if that's the word.
It's a good one.
Yeah, if we call it fizzle, that kind of high end fizzle. What I found was that the mid-range became a little bit more present, and everything fights everything. And I think I used to think keep the high end in because I was speaking to Warren Hewitt, and he was telling me about how many, I think it was Al Schmidt, he used to send his mixes to the mastering engineer, and the mastering engineer would always add like a dB or 2 dB or like a high shelf. They would always brighten his mixes, and he was like, screw that, I'm just going to like do that myself. So he made his mixes brighter. However, I think, when was that? Was that in the analog days where you would do a tape where it was dull, where I'm obviously mixing like 98% in the box, which has obviously got all the high end in there, so I probably don't need it. And I was wondering, well, why is everybody like gushing about this like 24K cut in Ruby? And then when I did it, I was like, okay, now I'm starting to make sense. And then I was looking at the high mids, and I was like, well, what is it? I was like, right, it's the sibilance control. Went back, dialed back the sibilance back on the vocal. And I went to the backing vocals. I was like, right, where's a lot of this energy coming from? Right, I didn't DS the backing vocals enough. It's something that I get taught is quite a lot, is when it comes to backing vocals, DS the crap out of them. Because obviously, if you think about it, if they're singing the same line, you've got S, and then you've got all these backing vocals with an S. And then again, the energy builds up. So if you fucking DS the crap out your backing vocals, you shouldn't really hear it, because your main lead vocal, that S, should be the thing that's most prominent. So I went back to stabilizer, and I was like, checking out my de-essing. I use the de-esser from Vocal Shaper from Emrichelix plugin. Talked about that a few weeks back. And, I was thinking of the mix like as a final product, and just sitting there thinking, right, what is it that this is showing me? This visual cue, right? Can I hear it? Does it sound good? And I was just going back to the mix, and it's annoying when I find that I do this all the time, where I've got all these fancy plugins because I'm Paul Third, and people fucking throw in plugins. Paul, try this, please try it out. Paul, try it out. Even if you bash it, right? The fucking advertising's good. But, and I try them all, and I'm like, yeah, this is good technology. And then I have my mentors who always say to me, Paul, right, I don't get distracted. Go back to the mix and put the hard work in. Stop being lazy. And then when I do that, it's always that thing where you're like, Sensei, you were right. And Sensei
I waxed on and I waxed off.
Yeah.
And I got there.
Yeah, Sensei is always right, man. And I think, what I've learned, I think what's great is that Ed's learning mastering. I'm trying to essentially master my mix in the mix. I'm trying to get my mix in a place where, because at the end of the day, if you think about 2-bus processing, it kind of is a mastering chain, really, is it? Because in the end, what does a mastering engineer have? They only have a stereo. Yeah. So you're affecting
it's
the
like
mix
you're
as a
looking
whole.
up to mastering and I'm looking down from mastering.
Yes.
We're both trying to achieve the same development. And I'm taking on board what you're saying, because it's definitely an interesting approach. I think if and when you jump down the mastering route, I think you're just going to flourish with it because of your analytical mind. I think you're going to take the mastering process and absolutely destroy it. And your mixing will just, you won't even need mastering. It'll just be like, no, Paul Third mixes mastered, mate. Chef's kiss.
But I think, a big part of me is always, in the back of my head, I'm always like Jason Joshua, when he's like, when he was at Abbey Road and he's saying, I don't want a mastering engineer to touch my record. I should when I send that record out, I send it out as the final mix. I get it to the loudness. Yeah. Serban does the same. Spike does the same. They're all sending the mastering engineers.
M does the same, because if that's like revision 19 that the client, the manager, the label have signed off on, if someone changes that, you've I don't want to swear because we had a complaint about cussing too much, but someone's fucked it right in the arse if they've changed that mix that everyone has changed. Everyone has approved, sorry. So it's a balance, and I kind of think they might be right. Now, we should talk about AI at some point, because that does make me question, is mastering redundant? But as I'm asking, of course it's not, don't be silly. I do believe in a third person doing it if you can't do it yourself. But I think doing it as you're effectively trying to learn how to master your own tracks at the moment. And I'm studying mastering to learn how to improve my mixing. it's two different ways of trying to achieve the same thing, I think, with a view to just, as you've said at the start, getting better and better. Because mastering, I've sent some stuff to mastering and it's come back different, or it's come back totally just wrong. And one example came back absolutely destroyed, and I was confused how somebody had ruined my mix so much. I couldn't believe it. The guitars were louder than the vocals in the middle, and the EQ had gone wrong, and it was very strange. I guess another part of it is also being able to communicate these things with a mastering engineer. Are your ears refined enough that you can say, hang on, in the final chorus when it's the loudest, I think you're pushing the limiter a dB or two, or there's some saturation, or are you hitting a clipper too hard that's bringing in distortion in that last chorus? If you can communicate like that, everyone's going to be a winner. Hey there, Ed here. You may recognise my voice from doing all the other DistroKid advert segments. This time I didn't want to just do a typical advert talking about stuff to do with DistroKid. I actually wanted to give you my feedback about the service because I genuinely do use DistroKid for uploading my music. And I know Paul does, and it turns out Dan Worrell does as well. I've used DistroKid since 2019. As you can see on the screen, I have 6 releases so far. It is genuinely super easy to use. The tracks get into Spotify within 24 hours, which is remarkable. Apple Music takes a little bit longer. I'd suggest giving that 10 to 14 days. The hyperfollow links are really useful for advanced promotion of your tracks, and the promo cards are really great visual aids for social media promotion. Ooh, I particularly like that one. DistroKid collect all the royalties from your streaming services, and here you can find an itemized breakdown of where all your income has come from. There's also a DistroKid referral where you can save your friends $10 per sign-up by creating your own VIP referral link. So, with AI in mind, I saw a service on Instagram the other week where you can get 40 tracks, or canals as they called them, on Instagram. They're clearly not a native-speaking software developer. 40 canals of audio mixed and mastered by AI for $48. But it's okay because they're Spotify and Apple Music certified.
Oh, for God's sake. Bullshit.
That's the state of the industry we're in right now, sadly. Now, I might do a video on it because I want to compare their service against one of my masters, but I just say might because if their mix comes back better than mine, I won't be doing the video.
I don't think it will. Because
of course it won't.
Because even if you think about Ozone, it's like, again, that's what we it's now a running joke now when you put it through Ozone. it does the same thing every time. You know what I mean? So you've got to be, like, I don't even need to say it, right? AI will never ever be able to understand if the feel is right. I think it's some, again, we're going to have present day productions on next week. And when I was in London at the Audient Aurea release event, I was speaking to Mark, and he told me a story about, you know, one of a big client that he got, and it was a great story because he was like, Paul, I was flapping because I listened to it and I was like, this is amazing. Like, everything I did was just kind of making it worse. And I was like, I'm just not going to do anything. I don't know if he maybe added a tiny little bit of level. He sent it back to the client, and the client was basically like, oh my God, this is amazing. And he went, what did you do? He went, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really do anything. I've basically just sent you back your own mix. But having that awareness to be able to use these and go, this doesn't need anything. This is as good as, you know, a mix could be, in my opinion. AI is never going to do that because it's never got, for me, it's common sense. You know what I mean? It's having that ability to feel a track. How can AI feel a track? Because the feel of a track is a humanistic response. You know, like, and we all feel things differently. It's so subjective. AI will try and do the same thing the same way every time because it's an algorithm. It's a 0 or a 1. That's the way it's going to be. It's going to do a certain thing. It's going to detect it. For example, an even better example was what Ed talked about last week. And what was it? You gave it a rock mix and it fucking said it was a folk mix or something like that. And that was Isotope. Yeah. So, like, again, it's really difficult for people to assume that AI is going to be able to master as good as an experienced audio engineer. Especially mixing. Like, how people really, like, there's people out there that are genuinely scared that AI is going to take over mixing. I'm like, just to think about how much CPU Gullfoss Master takes. Like, could you just imagine, Ed, like, the type of computer that you would need for AI to be able to mix a track like Serban Guinea, Spike Stent, the people at the top? Because the problem is that even the people at the top don't even know how to mix sometimes as good as Serban and Spike. So if humans can't even get to that fucking level of these guys, how do they expect AI to get to that level? They don't. What they're going to do is they're just going to give you an average. It's just kind of, basically it's going to be like an ozone, but it's just going to have set kind of, almost like kind of mixed monolith really. Some people give me a hard time and because they say, oh, you use mixed monolith a lot for your levels. And I'm like, yeah, but I use these. There's times that I'm like, no, that doesn't sound right in a tweak, but it gives me a starting level. And that's what, the only thing with AI is good if the human is always in the driving seat and the AI is always in control. If you genuinely think that you're going to be able, that an algorithm is going to be able to mix a record as good as me and Ed or you watching this right now, you are deluded. It is impossible because mixing is so unbelievably subjective. Could it maybe get a decent mix out? I don't even know if it could be decent, man, because the computational limitations, even the most powerful computer in the world wouldn't be able to mix a record like a professional record. I think people are scared of AI because they don't know how far it's going to develop. I've got faith in human beings. I've got faith that...
That's because you don't live in London. We've had this discussion.
True, yeah. But yeah, it's something that I'm not scared of. I know many people are scared of it. I'm not. I believe that... Here's the end of the day. How daft would it be for somebody to come up with a program that says, yeah, it can get you a decent mix, right? It's not going to be a professional mix, but it's going to sound better than you know, Joe Bloggs off the street that's just sitting with your acoustic guitar for a fucking Scarlett. It's going to do it's going to get you better than that. Maybe. Why would you make something like that when, in terms of your market, you need audio engineers? People make software for us to use their products. If you do it specifically for artists are going to go, but I don't want a fucking averagely decent mix that maybe might sound better than what I've got. I want pro. I want what's on Spotify. I want the Spikes, the Serbans. You know what I mean?
See, I think you're optimistically overlooking two factors. One is a lot of people, and I'm talking about, you know, our good friend Andrish has mentioned this kind of thing a few times. Shout out Andrish. There are certain clients you'll get who will have a stereo beat and they'll record a vocal to it. I'm not saying the story came from him, by the way. It may have done. And he'll get asked to mix it. And it's that kind of person who's still got the watermark, the branded watermark from Splice or whatever, embedded in the track. It's those people who do not care about, they just want the fame and fortune. They don't care about the process because they don't understand it. They will use these services and think, yeah, great. Because to their ears that are untrained and untuned to the details that we're striving for, and they're untuned to it because they haven't put the work in, because they don't care, because they're lazy, and they just want the end result, you know, kind of society we live in. There'll be what an AI thing can do, whether it be AI mastering that already exists or this new, you know, canal mixing on Instagram, FFS. It will probably do what to them is a good job. And if you listen to the stuff on Spotify, the 100,000 tracks and podcasts that go up every day, of which I estimate 60,000 of which, or at least 50-50 is music, if not 60-40. When you listen to some of the stuff that goes on there, AI mixing is going to be better than half of it.
So I don't even know if half of it. I don't even know if it would be better. It's just because I think from a computational point of view, and I know what computers could do already, and I'm just like, for it to be able to automate
say this
everything.
Company isn't in China mining Bitcoin during the day and 24 hours a day, And on another computer that's as powerful, they're doing AI mixes for people around the world who can afford $48 but don't want to pay $200 or $300 for a mix and then $50 to $100 plus, for mastering. The difference is huge. And there's no gatekeeper now. That's the problem. AI mixing and mastering is now available to everyone, and there will be a vast, I suspect, proportion of the market who don't understand, can't comprehend, and don't care about the end result enough, and will use that. The conscientious people like ourselves and everyone listening will not accept that, and we will, because we strive for better. So we will want to pay the mastering engineers. We'll want to pay the mix engineers. We'll buy, the better preamp, the real preamp, and not the clone. Well, not you, Paul, obviously, but some of us will, because we care that little bit extra, and we want it to be as good as possible. Now, to what end? When, as long as it's -8 LUFS on Spotify, the average person doesn't know anyway. Can't hear the difference.
Here's a stickling point, right? Here's the thing that, again, when I think about the computational power of it, artists are going to want this to be basically like a chat GPT, because as much as they don't care, they all have a vision, right? And they all, when anybody writes a song, for example, they listen to it and they're like, hold on, the guitars are, I wanted the piano to be more above in the guitar.
AI revisions are going to be interesting.
AI revisions, right? Again, the computational power that it's going to need, and it's like how that's going to be able to program that and then go back into the mix and just like, imagine the servers, man, like the sessions and the data. It's just, I just think of it and go, that is an absolute bollock. And the last thing that I will say, because I want to get away from AI because it's annoying me even thinking about it. But
Okay.
like at the end of the day, what do these artists, when you say fame, right, what do they strive to be? They strive to be the people in the charts. If you want to be in the charts, most cases, right, you're going to need to have a label behind you. There are people that have done a very, very good job doing it without label, but they are very few and far between. The record industry still is in control of the charts, right? So if you want to be successful, you want to be touring, you want to be doing blah, 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 all the great things, you want to be the next Ed Sheeran, you're going to need to have a record label behind you that's going to be able to push you and going to be able to get your music in the correct places. Now, the record industry is never, ever, ever going to accept AI. It's never going to accept AI because...
Well, hang on. I think what you're getting at is we need AI A&R guys, AI managers, AI record label executives, and then we can maybe make some money.
Could you imagine that? Just an entire record label, just all AI, just like... the artist just goes on like a chat GPT thing. Instead of the WhatsApp group, it's like chat GPT.
DistroKid sponsors the Working Audio Tools podcast, and 30% off your first year subscription can be found in the podcast show notes and the YouTube video description. Hyperfollow is the easiest way to place all of your content in one single place, making finding all of your content super easy for your audience. Upload artwork for your release, edit the information, and apply links to all of the streaming platforms your music is going to be available, which of course on DistroKid is potentially all of them that exist now and even in the future. Add social media buttons so your audience can find you and your latest music video. Creating a beautiful landing page with a preview of your music is easy with Hyperfollow. Hyperfollow links can be created for all of your releases, and it enables you to create pre-save links for your audience to pre-order your music before it's released. This link is shareable on all of your platforms and a great way to promote your next release, only with DistroKid.
I had this thing this week. Basically, I bought a piano and then they ended up trying to screw me over for an extra 150 quid, so I went bolt. Now, when I first spoke to them originally, I was like, this is definitely a bot that I'm speaking to, because when I typed in something, it was like 10 seconds later, woof, and it was like this. I was like, okay, that's a bot. And then when I was speaking about like the refund thing, I was like, right, you have to refund my money. I couldn't tell if I was speaking to a real person or an AI. I didn't know. And then I realised, I was like, okay, yeah, there is definitely, I'm definitely sure that I'm speaking to a person, because they were taking a long time. Like you see it typing. But it's scary to me how the world is kind of moving more into, less human beings and more set things. Like there's even a thing where, just very quickly off tangent, Me and my wife bought a mattress that we're away to actually send back because we don't like it. Now, the whole website was AI based, and it basically on the website was saying to you, haggle with me. So Laura was haggling, my wife was haggling with her fucking robot, and she was just like, well, what about this? What about this? We're back and forth. And then we ended up getting like so much off, and we're like, tried a little bit more. Sorry, I can't do that. And then I was like, okay, not interested. And then I came back and was like, okay, I've had a change of heart. I'll do it for that price.
Wow.
And me and Laura were like, that is scary that businesses are allowing a computer to like haggle. And see, when you go on the website, it's telling you, it's like, here's the price of it, but give me a better price and I'll think about it. I'm like, how? That's such a terrible business model.
I just
terrible.
can't imagine SX Pro doing that.
No, could you imagine that? I'd love it. I'd be like, come on, screw them over. It's like,
No, those guys are great. They do help you out when they can.
But it's for me, when it comes to art, I would like to think, as much as, you know, people are looking into AI for like even stuff like album art and stuff, and you know, obviously I watched a video where they were showing this new AI thing where generally you can type in man on a beach with a sun hat and a shotgun, with like, you know, old miners like pretending to like dig up fossils on the beach or fucking whatever, and it will give you that. It will genuinely give you something as random as that. It'll give you that. But I'd like to think that with music, there is this, especially with artists, right? There is that relationship. And your job as a mixer is to be able to give the artist that vision. AI is going to struggle with that. It's gonna. Like, yeah. I think the thing that's never going to change. The thing that's never going to change is is the artist's vision, right? As much as, and I get what you're saying, some people don't care. And again, the stereo beat thing where it's just like, yeah, here's a beat, here's a vocal over it, yeah, they don't care. I couldn't care less about them. Fucking jog on into the sunshine and enjoy your best life with your shitty fucking songs. Like, do what you want to do. But for the actual artists, right, and I mean that, I know it sounds maybe a bit dickish, but for the actual artists, right, the people that actually want to like play instruments and write their own songs and give a crap about lyrics and give a crap about, you know, musicality, and actually care about actually producing a piece of work that evokes an emotion, these are the people that are going to need human beings like us and
Couldn't
people
agree
watching. More. And so I'm not scared, because I would like to think that as long as the humans stay in control, it's not going to change. Music isn't going to change overnight. Music is always going to evoke an emotion. It's all people always, when it comes to musicians, they're so passionate. Even like me and you, when we've done songs and we go, it's horrible knowing that I'm away to put this out and you'd be lucky if you get 150 people listen to it after 6 months. But know what? We still have so much passion, and we still do the fucking pre-save links, and we still do whatever we need to do, and you still try and push that music out. Because
good segue into DistroKid there about pre-save links. I like what you did there.
Totally
unintentional, but you can get 30% off your first year subscription using the VIP link in the podcast show notes and the YouTube video description. All right, on that AI ginger bombshell, ginger AI bombshell, which way around should that go? We'll round off because we've gone on a massive tangent, we'll round off the mastering episode. We are going to be bringing on Mark and James from Present Day Production next week, because Mark is a highly specialised mastering engineer. James and Mark are building their own speakers. The Mum 8 and the Mum 6s are out, I believe, now. I'm sure we'll be talking about why YouTubers decided to make their own speakers as well. But I do want to pick their brains about mastering, and maybe we can talk about the tools of mastering with them, because they did design their own speakers, which are very, very good speakers, and I can see how they'd be very good for mastering. I think my final round off would be, as with anything, gain as many perspectives over what you're doing as you can, recording or mixing or mastering, to improve the job that you're doing, and just, join us as we constantly strive to move forward and improve ourselves with what we're doing.
I'm going to keep it very simple. I think the takeaway from this is do whatever you can to get it right at the source. Whether it be recording, get it right at the source. Whether it be the song, get the production right at the source. If you get everything right at the source, hopefully you will get to a point where the mastering engineer just looks at that and goes, I just need to make it a bit louder. Oh, maybe take a little bit of 200 out there, half a dB. Happy with that? Thank you very much, mate. Job done. Everybody walks away happy. So try your best to get it right at the source. That's what I'm trying to do. And it's great having Ed that's experimenting with mastering, because I can't be bothered, and I still need to learn fucking Atmos mixing. That's my next thing. That's my next domino. Is I've got that Atmos setup,
and then
I'm
Atmos mastering. Oh,
yeah,
Paul.
I know all that stuff.
Go on,
you know
get
what
off
I
this podcast. Go and do some work.
yeah, I know. Right, okay. Right, thank you very much for listening. If you've liked it, again, like the video, comment down below. If you've not subscribed, subscribe. And we will see you next week with the present day production, guys. See you soon.
Been emotional.